Today's episode of Pencil vs. Pixel is made possible by Media Temple. Get 25% off your first month of hosting and sign up today. Just use code PVSP. All you have to do is go to pencilversuspixel.com/Media Temple. Welcome to Pencil vs. Pixel. My name is Caesar, and I have the pleasure of being joined today by Mr. Chris Coyier. Hey, Chris.
What's up?
What is up, man? Thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure, Caesar.
Chris is the man behind the popular website CSS Tricks and co-founder of CodePen, the code editor in your browser with instant previews of your code, among many, many other things. Chris, before we continue, pencil or pixel?
Ooh, pixel. I didn't know you were going to hit me right out of the gate with that. That's good.
Boom.
Pixel. Pixel's good.
What?
I don't even know what that means exactly, but I just feel like it's better to be,
Why pixel?
decisive.
Even though...
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know if I own a pencil. If I scoured this office, there might not be a pencil in here.
You never write notes with a pencil, man?
The pixel.
I'm
Pixel.
kidding.
I do have CodePens. We have at CodePen. We ordered some branded pencils.
CodePens?
Yeah. They actually don't say pen at the end. They just say code because the pen is implied. Hilarious.
That is awesome.
Anyway, yeah, I thought maybe it's like some deep thing about a process or something. Like, do you start with sketches or not? I don't know if that's where you're going with that idea, but I don't do a lot of sketching, so I thought maybe just jump right to the pixels.
Right. So, Chris, I've given a little bit of background of what you do, but let's get to know you better. What's your story?
I'm a web designer, a front end guy primarily, and I work on my websites. The three big projects that I work on these days are CSS Tricks, like you mentioned, which is it's in its about sixth year, and it's a blog and it's a forum site, and I do screencasts there and a variety of other things. It's largely me just writing about the web, kind of mostly front end stuff. And then I along those same lines, I have a podcast like this, only it's audio only. Called Shop Talk Show that I do with my friend Dave Rupert, and we also talk about largely front-end stuff in a kind of a Q&A format, although we have guests on as well. And then CodePen is the thing that I spend most of my time on, which is a web app, like you said. It's a code editor in the browser where you build stuff, and it's kind of a community site, and that's where all of my time goes, is to just those three things.
Did you always want to be in this field, with the web design field, or was it something that sort of evolved over time?
Yeah, I'm not sure when the moment came where I was like, the web, that's sweet, that's what I wanted to do. I think it was more, I don't, whatever. I can't think of a particular moment. Although I was always kind of a computer geek, as it were, even in pre-high school and on. The people that I looked up to the most were the nerdiest of the kids. I remember some kid had like a dial-in bulletin board service that I just thought was so cool, and got into that for a minute. Got a modem as soon as I could get it, and was always just into that kind of thing. At the time, I wasn't like, I wish I could design things. I'm sure my mind was as far away from design as possible. I was more into games and that type of thing. But then came high school, and for whatever reason, I clicked with programming. I took a programming class, totally dug it. I thought our programming professor was really good. It was Turbo Pascal, really liked that, and whatever, and got good at it and loved it, and was like, I had a kind of, I want to do programming moment, and because I was like, then college is going to be coming up here. I went to college, and I was like, this is the thing that I felt the strongest about in high school, I guess, and it seems kind of career-y and smart, or for whatever reason. So I was like, I'll be a computer science, or it was called like MCS at the college I went to, Management Computer Systems, and like pretty much right away found it was kind of bogus. It's just like, I couldn't. The classes weren't in Pascal anymore, even though I liked that language. It was right away into C like languages, and we did Java, and I just didn't like it as much. It was way more object oriented. I didn't get it, and combined with the struggle of just being in college, period, which is weird right away. Eventually took to taking to college, but it took a couple of years, and then anyway, I just dropped it because it felt soulless and sucky and gross. And I had that. This is 4 years in. I was about to graduate, and I was like, I can't do it. I
No
can't live my
way.
life. Yeah, so dropped it. And the other thing that I did in high school that I really liked was ceramics and pottery. We had a really good program for it in high school randomly, which most high schools don't. And we also had a really good program for it in college. And my roommate, who I was living with at the time, was a ceramics major, and I was so envious of his life. He was always covered in clay, and he was going to art parties, and there's tons of girls in art, and I was just like, "Your life is so cool." And mine is something, up doing code and stuff. And I didn't. I was envious of his life, kind of, and I was like, I like this. I take to that too. I consider myself artistic-ish or whatever, and I just up and switched majors. So I switched to ceramics and ended up graduating with that, essentially a bachelor of arts, and
That is
most of the
awesome.
stuff in my show was ceramics at the end. But took enough stuff, took enough designy classes too that. So then when I get out, I was like, well, I'm not, dudes, people are way better than me not making it in ceramics. So I guess I better like get back to it. And so design ended up kind of being like this marriage of art and computer science, kind of. It kind of is too, especially things like CSS, which are mathematical and analytical and logical, and yet produce art in a way. So it seems to line up nicely thinking back on it, like what a good combination of those two things, that where I ended up. But I ended up getting a job in doing pre-press work, which is also rather technical and nerdy, which we can get all into, but some people get a kick out of that. And then kind of was kind of like, this isn't artistic enough. You're like, when you're in the world of pre-press, you have no artistic control at all.
Yeah.
Not to say there's no art in it, but you're not creating anything from scratch really. And was working on web stuff at the time, and I had like very little web experience. I learned very little of that in college, but it seemed cool. It seemed fun. I like how you can create something and the whole world can see it. And I don't know, it just seemed like something fun to get into. Not to mention, I have like the same story as like tons of other web designers, is like in a band, need a band website, you know? So it's like,
So
okay,
were you
well,
in a
I'll make
band
one.
during that period?
Yeah, kind of. I've always been into acoustic stuff. So while I was into college, I was playing mandolin in a bluegrass band. Then I was in an Irish band, and so now I play the banjo and mandolin and guitar and bass and stuff. And I'm not in a band anymore, but at the time I was kind of in and out of a couple of different bands. And I was like, I'll make the website just mostly because that sounded fun to me, not because we desperately needed a website. Anyway, and that was the first couple of websites, and then it's so you find that it's a little easy. You struggle through it once, buy a domain name, figure out how to point it to some hosting, and then you're like, well, I need something. You don't want to start from scratch, so you buy some kind of template and you put it up there, and then you're like, well, that's not how I want it to look. So you struggle your way through figuring out how to put a cool header in there, change colors, whatever you're gonna do, and that's like rad. It's like a moment, I feel like, for a lot of people where you feel like, oh, I have the power. I can do this. And not only have I struggled through it, now I understand that this is so complicated and weird. No wonder people pay other people to do it. Maybe I can make this a job, kind of thing. And I was just mostly just getting a kick out of it. So I was just building sites, building sites, building sites, and eventually had built enough of them that I was able to ditch pre-press and be like, hey, company that desperately needs a web person like tomorrow because their guy left, here's a couple of dumb little sites I made on the side. Why don't you hire me? And I was able to, and that was with a local like advertising agency, kind of design agency in Madison, Wisconsin, where I was living at the time. And they hired me, and that was like trial by fire because they had like literally web clients ready to go. Were paying them money right now. So it was like, okay, you better learn quick. And I did, and worked there for a number of years, and thus started my career in web.
That's amazing, man. I didn't know you were an art major. That's that's awesome. So
Yeah,
what
a BA anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So did that play a big role in I don't know, maybe opening up into to the web early on?
Kind of, just because then all your classes are, I was like, okay, here's the computer guy coming into art, so I might as well take some classes like the Illustrator class and the Flash class and all that stuff, because you can't just, if you're going to get a BA, you can't just only take ceramics
Right.
classes. You have to flesh it out anyway. And I was like into design. I thought that would be cool. And as a matter of fact, you know, that I took as many of those classes as I did ceramics ones. So whatever, that's how it went down, I guess.
Because of your previous experience in programming, do you find it to be very sort of, did it flow naturally and go
Yeah,
pretty well from the
I don't
beginning?
know. I wonder if that's true. If that I think part of it is probably just not being like afraid, kind of, or being like, well, if I was able to program a little game, certainly I should be able to figure out a website. And just because there's a little bit of that stigma, probably. I mean, we all know now that websites can be quite complicated, but just to throw a couple of words up on a web browser, surely that can't be so hard, and that really isn't that hard. And at least I had the confidence to struggle my way through it. I'm not sure if it, whatever, if my like background in computers made it much easier or not, but it certainly gave a little early confidence, probably.
So let's talk about when you started CSS Tricks. That wasn't your first project, your first blogging project, was it, or did you have something else?
No, probably not my very, very first, but it was pretty early on. It was kind of like, I don't know, my dumb little story that kind of goes into it is that I had another friend. At this time I was in Madison. I was working for that design agency, and I just kind of up and left, and I moved out to Portland, Oregon, just to like do something interesting with my
Yeah.
life. And I asked them if I could stay working for them. I was just kind of like, hey, I'm gonna leave one way or another. So if I could continue working for you, that would be ideal, but like I'm gonna go either way. And thankfully they said yes. So I was able to keep my job as I moved out there. Anyway, the dude that I moved in with did like phone support for like Adobe products. So he didn't work directly for Adobe, but he worked for some company that was outsourced to do that type of thing. So he would pick up the phone and it would be like, my Acrobat doesn't save good or something. And it would just, and then he would calmly walk them through it. And for whatever reason, we had this idea that we could take his like knowledge of what he knew the most common problems of Adobe products were and blog about them. So if it was like, here, I get this phone call all the time, let's make like the definitive blog post that like solves that thing, because chances are people are searching the web for it first. And then I was reading sites like Darren Rose Pro Blogger and stuff, and being like, you can make money blogging. Look at me, I blog about digital cameras and I'm super rich now. And I was like, cool, I want to blog about dumb stuff and be rich too. That sounds easy and fun. So it's like, this is our weird little idea. We'll have a website for Photoshop, we'll have one for InDesign, we'll have one for Acrobat. We'll have one blog for each of these major Adobe products, and we'll just fill it with help topics. And then we'll plaster it with Google Ads, and then we'll be rich eventually somehow. And it turns out that like wasn't it was kind of a stupid idea, but it was a stupid idea for different reasons that we thought. One, Adobe didn't like those, and we eventually had to stop doing them
Oh no.
via legal reasons. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. The important lesson was that it's not that fun to blog about something that you don't really care about. Like, the idea was more like, these will have high search volume, thus we'll cover it with ads. It wasn't because we cared about solving people's Adobe problems. We had no passion whatsoever for that topic. So it became a slog. It became like, oh, did you do any posts today? No. Did you do any posts today? No. We should probably do some. Yeah, maybe someday, or whatever. So that was all those sites. But then another one in that little network of sites, if you could call it such a thing, even though it really wasn't, was CSS Tricks too. I was like, well, I'll also have one, and I'll write about web stuff too, because I'm learning a lot, because I'm now the web manager for these like 6 different websites, and I'm like trying to CSS them and make them look cool, and I'm learning a ton about WordPress, I'm learning a ton about CSS, I'm learning a ton about how to make websites. I'll write about some of those tricks and stuff that I'm learning. Tricks. and I'll make a website called CSS Tricks, which is the cheesiest, dumbest name ever. And here we are, like 6 years later, like CSS Tricks. Ugh. I
Works well
can't
though.
change it now. It's too late. It's too late. It's fine. It does the
Sounds good. It
trick.
has a good ring to it.
Does it?
Yeah,
Good.
man.
I mean, now it has some branding clout or whatever,
There
so
you
I'm
go.
I'm gonna stick with it now. But anyway, it was at the same time, and that was at the time where I was just starting that web job in Madison, where I was trial by fire too. So I was like learning a lot about web through that too. So it was the perfect time. I had tons to say about web design. Turns out it was kind of a funny time on the web because there wasn't actually a whole lot of people writing about CSS anymore. There was like a boon era of people writing about CSS with Doug Bowman writing about stuff and Dan Cederholm and friggin' sliding doors and a list apart and like all these like big guys. And then for whatever reason during this time, it was like browser wars gross and like people just were less excited about it. There was this vibe that CSS has largely been figured out, and all that people aren't discovering interesting things to say about CSS anymore and stuff. That's kind of the vibe. It was kind of like a dead time. And I just blogged all the way through it, because I had no idea I had no idea who was who. I had no idea about any of that stuff. I would learn over time, but right when CSS Strict started, I was not a part of that clan at all. Anyway, I don't know. That was kind of the start of CSS Tricks, and then I just kept writing and kept writing and kept writing. I mean, there's never been a period of time where I just let CSS Tricks do nothing from 6 years ago to now. I write for it constantly since then. Almost. I mean, I doubt there's been most. There's probably times where I post it every day, but that's not the case anymore. It's probably on average once every 2 days, like 2.2 days or something is probably it. Mhm.
Whenever you learn something new, do you immediately just start posting about it, or do you sort of
Still to this day, I do
yeah?
that. Yeah.
How
That's a good thing. I mean, I do try to start writing it at least a little bit rather than take up my pencil and write down, like, let's say you have this big idea, this has happened to me before, and you write it down, and then the next day you look at it, however it was, maybe you emailed yourself or literally wrote it down or whatever, and it says like circles, and you're like, what the heck? Why did I write that down? Or maybe you even remember why you wrote it down, but you don't remember like what the like fire was. You don't remember like why you thought that would be interesting in any way. So like that's what you need to capture right away. When you have this idea for a new post or some new thing you want to do, you can't just write down the vague idea. Try to like get out as much as you can. Get out as close to what that like important nugget, the thing that inherently makes that idea interesting. That might take a couple sentences. It might take a paragraph. You might even just finish the blog post while you're doing it. But try to get as much as you can. And I have like endless troves of that. I have zillions of blog draft posts. I use things on my Mac to write down things of which there's hundreds of ideas in. So yeah, there's no shortage. I mean, if I went through some of them, I'd be like, no, 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 no. But some of it, there's like little ideas in there. Like, yeah, that was good. I should go back and actually write that post,
now? How long?
which
How
is
long do you let
nice.
these sit for? How long do
Wow,
they sit?
I don't
Like
know.
all these
I'm sure
ideas.
there's ones in here that are several years old.
Wow. Do you ever go back to those really old ones and create a new post out of them?
I do occasionally.
Hmm.
I mean, the chances of it being interesting to a 2 year old idea now is low, but like they'll just be at the bottom of the list. I mean, if I look at it and I process it and I said that's stupid, I will get rid of it. I'll just get. But if I look and I'm like, I see that looks slightly interesting, I'll just leave it there. I mean, just not doing me any harm. It's a pixel on a screen. I might as well just leave it there because maybe it will spark something interesting, or maybe it will connect with something more modern day that's happening that's interesting, or whatever. So yeah, I never like wake up and be like, I have nothing to write. I'm out of ideas. That's never gonna happen. There's so many ideas in here.
Let's talk about how you've kept that. I don't know how to put it, but I would say the drive to continue writing on CSS Tricks. I mean, you've continued for the last 6 years, not almost nonstop. every few days, and it's been growing and getting stronger and stronger as time had passed. What is it that drove you to continue to do that? And were there any sort of any setbacks, any pitfalls along the way?
There hasn't been too many. There's been a couple of like heart-stopping moments in there about like one of them was when the domain name CSS Tricks was stolen, and we can maybe just link that up in the show notes because that could
Yeah.
be a whole conversation or whatever. And it was like a big sucky moment, kind of. And luckily, I think the reason that it was able to be saved was that I had grown up enough as a website that my basically complaining and moaning about the situation on Twitter and on the website itself and such was enough to kind of inspire the powers that be at GoDaddy to do right by me and make this a good PR opportunity for them. Not that I don't know that to be sure that they've helped other people that were involved. It was because it wasn't just my website at the time. It was like a whole bunch of like design websites literally got stolen at once. It's very strange. I still have never really got to the true bottom of it. Maybe someday I'll make like an investigative journalism attempt at it. But anyway, that
Nice.
sucked. That was a moment of if I were to not have fought that fight as strongly as I did, I could have just gave up the whole thing. Could have been gone. I could be doing something totally different right now. Whether my life would be better or worse is who knows. But anyway, so there has been moments like that. There hasn't been a whole lot of just like I'm bored of this, so I think I'll flutter away and do something else. I tend to keep the enthusiasm up just because it has legs, just because there is a certain motivation to the fact that if I write it, there's a fairly large bunch of people that will read it. And that's just nice, That's just cool. That's just inherently motivating to know that if I do that, people will read it. That wasn't the case early on. I wish I could speak to what it felt like 4 years ago. I don't even really remember. There was just less at stake then because I could write it and I didn't really care if anybody readed it or whatever, And now there was kind of advantages on both ends. So I'm not sure what kept me going back then, other than just my inherent feeling that I feel like if you're just really persistent at things, things tend to work out. So that was probably what was keep me going back then. But today it's really easy. It's just like people will read it, and it's my job. I get paid to do it through various means. I sell subscriptions to learning materials right on CSS Tricks. I have advertising on CSS Tricks. So it's not one-to-one with my traffic, but assuming I keep traffic reasonably high, I can continue to sell ads, which is good. So I'm motivated like most people are motivated to do their jobs so that they can have money to live their lives.
At what point did you see your viewership grow, where you were significantly, when you were just like, man, I really have the chance right now to do something big with this?
Yeah, that's tough too, because I think that does happen to some people, or they get some like major validation in the thing that they're doing. And then and it might be like if you're an app, they might be an investor giving you a pile of money. Maybe that's the motivation you need or something. I could show you the Google Analytics traffic chart for CSS Tricks over the 6.5 years. There's no hockey sticks at all. It's just like that. It's just a slow burn all the way up. So there was never any moment at which that was like, this is it. This is my big chance. So I kind of had to just like pick a part. There was for most, I do this only now. I do CodePen and CSS. Most of this time I had a job. So it's only been the last couple of years in which I went out off on my own, and it just was a leap of faith. It was kind of like, this has grown to the point where I think I can make it sustainable. Then I pulled the cord, quit the job, which was risky-ish. It wasn't a disaster because I have enough web design skill that I could go back to some web design job. So it wasn't the world's riskiest thing. It's not like I bet the farm on it or whatever. And then, but it did get me to the point like, well, I need to do something right now though, because if I'm not working towards making this more sustainable, I will crash and burn. I will have to go back to work or whatever, sell my truck or something. So immediately I was incredibly inspired to do something. And that's when I did the Kickstarter thing, which if nobody knows, we can link that up in the show notes too. It was kind of like, I want to make CSS Tricks a more sustainable business for me. Essentially, I want to make more money on this website. But I'm gonna earn it too. I'm gonna do more content. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this a better site in which that makes more money for me and hopefully is better for everybody. But here's the deal. Part of that involves redesigning the site. It's going to redesign, it's going to structurally change some things. It's going to change some advertising in such a way that will make more money. It's going to have a paid section of the site. I'm going to do all this work on the site to get ready for this making it a better business. But why would I do that all hidden away from everybody? That's exactly the kind of thing that I write about. Why do it all hidden when I could make that into the content that I sold? So it's kind of like a pretty obvious symbiotic thing. So I just said, okay, part of what I'm going to do is make this CSS Tricks better, but I'm going to record the whole process of how I do that. What's the redesign like from well, I'm just thinking about it all the way till done and deployed and out. The entire process, which will take months and months and months. So I did that, recorded it, and said, that's the Kickstarter. If you want to join me on this journey and watch all these videos of what it was like to do a big redesign, then pledge bucks starting at like $25 or something. And then it will go up from there. Do you want a t-shirt with it? Do you want, all these things, and it turned out really good. There was a lot of community support for it. It ended up far exceeding the goal, and the goal was not a big deal. The goal was like, I'm going to do this anyway. So the goal, there wasn't like a number that I wasn't going to do it at. I'm just going to set the goal low, and whatever it still far exceeded my expectations, which is awesome. But the goal was kind of irrelevant. Anyway, we could do another whole podcast on Kickstarter because I have plenty of opinions about that. But
about Kickstarter.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. It was a good overall experience.
But it was probably stressful.
It was a little funny how it turned out. It was stressful. Here's two quick things. One of them is I don't particularly enjoy the motivation of having people have already paid you and now you have to come through on them. I like to do the work to earn the money later. I prefer the reverse of the thing, and I've seen it happen a number of times with people now where their Kickstarter is successful and they're happy and pumped, and then their motivation dips off and they don't come through as well. And I get that. I get it's a reversal of motivation that feels weird. And the people that think, wow, you did so well on your Kickstarter now, you owe me so hard.
Oh,
there's that kind of like, and you're rich now, so I'm gonna like have this different attitude towards you, even though just because it wasn't that much money, it was very far from being rich, and the more you make on Kickstarter, the more rewards you need to fulfill. It doesn't mean that you just straight up earned more money. It means you need to send out more T-shirts.
Were you doing fulfillment, or were you?
I had help with it.
Yeah?
I mean, I factored that in, but I have a woman named Sarah who works with me on CSS Tricks and does a lot of that type of stuff for me, who I specifically hired because I don't like going to the post office.
Oh, I hear you, man. I totally hear you.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'm the same way. Where do you see CSS Tricks going in the next few years?
Well, I'm actually tinkering around. I was just tinkering around tonight with a little bit of a redesign, and it's not the scale and magnitude of the last time was, but I tend to do it every year or two, kind of push out a little redesign that just is, feels a little more modern, and has a couple of specific goals like, speed and just bringing it up to date with modern aesthetics kind of thing. So I will probably do that, but it is less of a focus now that I have CodePen, kind of. CodePen is, we have years of development planned for it, and that's where I'm getting the most kick out of. I think it has the most potential, of all of them, and I like working with my friends on it and whatever. So that's CSS Tricks will be in a back seat to it, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I will blog my heart out forever probably on that site. So where it will go is just to a, it will just be my blog. It will be a place where I continue to write about stuff, and the forums will be there, and I'll do screencasts when I can. It's just going to be more of the same with a new redesign. I doubt. And there'll probably be like I'll do a new series and I'll put it up there or whatever. It's just going to be kind of more of the same, but that's all good stuff, like.
Yeah, CodePen, man, it's amazing. It's very very awesome. Can you tell us more about what started the idea?
Sure. And as a matter of fact, if people are really interested in that, we just had this idea, and it's just about to have legs. I imagine maybe by the time this goes out, you'll be able to listen to this too. The three of us who work on CodePen. So anyway, remember what I was talking about? I worked for that little design agency. It was called Chapman Design in Madison,
Yes.
Wisconsin, and out in Portland and all that stuff. When I left there years later, the reason I left was so that I started working for Wufoo, which is this online form builder. It's still around today. It's a great product, makes online forms for websites. I worked there for a number of years too. And while I was there, there was also three founders, just like we have on CodePen, and then the next three people hired were Tim, Alex, and me. And at least that were technical. There was a support person in there too that had beat me, but we were the first three technical hires or whatever. I was a design hire, I guess, but and now it's us three. Those co-founders have now gone on to do other things, and us three are in CodePen. So I don't know, we've worked together for a long time through at Wufoo and then at SurveyMonkey after that acquisition happened at Wufoo, and now CodePen. So it's us three, and we were just kind of always looking for a project to do together. We've done other, we've worked on large scale web apps before. So when this kind of came along, it was kind of a natural fit. But now where I was going with that is we started a little podcast too. I don't know how long we'll go on with it, but kind of the idea was let's document, let's do a bit of a self-documentary, or God, I feel like I didn't say that word right, but about what is it like to run a little web app, and what is it like business-wise? What is it like to the community? Let's talk about money. Let's talk about security. Let's talk about tech. Let's talk about all of those things that go into running a web business. So that'll be out. Maybe we can link it up. So right, but in a nutshell, it was kind of like, I have CSS tricks, that. I write about web stuff there. A lot of those articles are tutorials in which it ends up with, here's how you build a thing or a part of a thing or whatever. And the most compelling way to show that is a demo. Here's it working in your web browser. And forever I had demos where you would read the post, and at the bottom would be like view demo, and you click that and you go over to the demo and you can look at it. And if you want to dig into it, fine, go ahead, view source, open the web inspector, whatever. And then became over the years popular sites like JSBin, JSFiddle. You've seen those, right? That is awesome. I was such a huge major fan of both of those sites. What a even better way to show code. Not only do you get to see the demo, but you get to see the code as well. And not only that, you get to play with it live right there. So awesome. And I was like, my demo section sucks on CSS Tricks compared to that. I should dig in and just convert everything over to these sites. Right. And I wanted to do that. And I was like, yeah, but what about when they go down? And what about, like, I get a lot of traffic through those demos. So what if I wanted to like host my own kind of version of that and maybe like continue to have the advertising on there because this is a business and stuff.
Right.
And I was like, but I love these things. Like, I don't even just kind of love it. This is awesome. This is like what these are a really good idea. I think I can do one of these too. Only I think I can do a better job, frankly. I think I could do one of these better, and I can sink all of my time and effort into doing that, and it will serve CSS Tricks. That's the point, is like I can do this side project as essentially as, kind of to make CSS Tricks better. Yeah, that's really what it's still doing, really. It turned out that building a code editor in the browser, building one like a JSFiddle alternative is kind of how it started out, even though we're kind of not thinking of it in that way anymore. And I think we'll shift it. That shifting will start to think, especially if we talk again in a year from now. I think those comparisons are going to stop happening, because even though that's a great tool, I'm sure it will continue to be. We're going to continue to have that as our core component and grow in other ways. Anyway, that's another conversation. Point is, the social component of CodePen really grew to the front. It was kind of like, and I don't even mind the comparison, is like because I looked at Dan Cederholm and Rich and those guys and what they built at Dribble. There's a lot of connections between Dribble and CodePen. It's just kind of like, what is the most popular, cool, happening stuff going on in front end design, instead of just any type of visual design. So I guess if nobody's ever seen it, it's codepen.io, and as you go, the homepage of that site is like at the moment is like pics from me and my team of like the coolest things that have been built pretty much that day. So that's one of those tough things to find on other sites. How do you know what the cool stuff people are building? And you don't really know. We decided to make that kind of the core experience at the homepage. And then your ability to build new pens as well that we call pen. A pen is like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that gets rendered into a demo. I hate throwing around terms that people don't know on a
No, that's
site.
great.
It just means a demo essentially. Anyway, that's the idea of CodePen, is that you sign up for an account, you can build these pens on there. There's all kinds of features that make that experience nice. For example, you can use preprocessors, and the editor is kind of nice and comfortable. We try and make it as close to as powerful as something like Sublime Text as we can. You follow other developers, they follow you. You heart stuff, you comment on each other's stuff. You take those things that you build and embed them on your own blog, and there's loads of features, and there's even more features if you decide to pay us and go pro. Things like being able to collaborate one-on-one with somebody, get that Google Docs like experience where there's kind of two cursors in the code area. There's professor mode, which is I type and I can send this URL out to 100 people if I want, and they watch. As I type keys, they're watching those characters come onto the screen, and they're watching that thing happen right away. It's a kind of a compelling way to teach a classroom, and a lot of universities are using it for that.
Oh,
Like
that's awesome.
the professor will give them, and they're not just watching video, they're watching literally live rendering. A student can hit stop and play and then edit the code themselves and mess around with it, and then click catch up to the class, and it will catch them back up to where the professor is. And tools like that.
Wow.
Those are pro features, things like being able to upload assets just through drag and drop, so that like if you need to use an image when you're building it, you just grab it, drag it in there, it'll upload it, and you can use it right there. We're trying to make a really nice editor that has all the power and comfort of how you normally write code, and then compel you to upgrade to the pro plan with a bunch of other cool features if you need it.
That's
Anyway,
amazing.
wow, that's the CodePen spiel, and there's so much more to come. So much more I didn't cover, but yeah, I'm pretty excited about it on a day-to-day basis.
That is super, super awesome, man. Chris, before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask you, for the person that doesn't know much about code, or building websites, but yet, let's say this person has a good eye for design, and they sort of know what they want, but they don't know how to do that, how to create that. Do you have any books or resources, I'm sorry, where that person could go and essentially learn how to do these kind of things, or start learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like how it was framed too. Is you kind of like you're already interested, one, and you already have a little bit of an eye for it, or whatever. Even if you don't, but you wish you did. I like that idea, because first of all, I think you should not worry too much, because I think those are the hardest things to get, as a true interest in it, and a bit of an eye. There's that. I think maybe a lot of people have seen it. There was actually a video that was made for it recently of that Ira Glass, who's the radio host for This American Life, and he's got this great quote on how the reason that you get into creative arts is because you have good taste, and there's this long period of time when you're a creative professional where the things that you make don't live up to the taste that you have. So if you're in that position, you should feel good about yourself. You just feel like, okay, this is going to be a slog, and I'm going to get through it, but eventually I'm going to come out of it and start making things coming out of my fingers that are up to the taste that I have, and that's going to happen for you if you're I hate to throw around passion too much, but if your desire or whatever to do this kind of thing is there, you'll kind of get through this. And one of our little mantras on Shop Talk Show, the podcast I do with Dave, is this: just build websites. And we've had like an auditorium scream it, and it's been really fun. But it's this idea that you just need to do it. Go buy the domain name. Go to whatever domain host you want. Buy the dang thing. So now you have some inspiration. You already have the domain name, so you got to do something with it now. Then, if you've never built a website before, anyway, figure out how to do the awkward part where you point it at your hosting. Figure out the awkward part where you get the FTP credentials of how to log into it. Figure out the awkward part where you need a FTP program that can put the files there, or something like Code or whatever. Get some junky free FTP program. Figure out how to upload an index.html file to that server, and then change something, and then load that domain in your browser and watch it happen. You're like, yeah, that's that powerful moment that you're looking for, that allows you to think that kind of anything is possible. Then you're like, okay, well, that's neat and all, but I suck at web design. Okay, well, go find a free template, or go spend $8 or whatever and buy like a nice looking web template, and then put that up on the site, and you'll be like, wow, that's good. You will know that you didn't do it, but you know that you can see how it was done. Then go in there and start changing those colors, changing the fonts, changing the stuff, and eventually it'll feel like yours. You'll feel like, I did this. This is a design. I feel like a lot of people go through this, and that's the moment that you need. And then you can dig in a little deeper, learn a little bit more, dig in a little deeper, learn a little more. But you have what you need to be motivated. It's just like buying guitar and coming home. You know that you're not going to be amazing when you get home, but if you learn a little bit, if you learn like just the intro to some dumb Dave Matthews Band song or something, you'll be like, yeah. You'll be like, I know I'm not that good yet, but because I was able to just get a few notes right in a row, it's like, cool, I can build from that. And I think that's where you should go with web design.
Awesome. Chris, one last piece of advice that you would give. If there's one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm a pretty big fan of the persistence idea, and I know that's permeated this talk in a bunch of ways, but that's big to me, to not give up too early on your ideas, and it's just because I see it so often of people that work on one little thing and they're just like, oh, it failed, oh, poor me, I guess I'll go do something else, kind of thing. No, stick with the ideas that you have for kind of a long period of time. It doesn't mean stick with a dead horse, you know. I mean, I don't see me never give up on anything, but a lot of times, especially in this world of competition, and there's a website for everything kind of thing, you might have to give literally years to ideas to find out if they have legs. And that's the only thing that's ever worked for me. The things that I've stuck with for years and years and years are the things that ever got anywhere. So I know that's very personal to me stuff, but that's what I got for you.
Wow. Where can we find you online, Chris?
I use my name for stuff, Chris Coyier. So that's me on GitHub. That's me on Twitter. That's my personal site is at that. You know, if there's a new app, I'm at that. Twitter's pretty good. I like that one.
Awesome. And everyone, you'll be able to find the links to everything we talked about here, and where to find Chris online on pencilversuspixel.com/Chris Coyier. That's pencilvspixel.com.
Nice URL format. I endorse that.
Thank you. /Chris Coyier. Coyier. I keep saying Coyier. It's like Coyier.
That's okay. It's really, I think it's kind of both. A lot of people actually know, people have known me for 10 years say Coyier.
Is that a
lot of people say Coyier, which is that's a little because sometimes things in ER and French and an A, and there was like Christian Okoye. It's like a football player. Anyway, it's not that. I would be okay if it was. It's not though. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Awesome.
It's a fabulous show.
And again, everyone, you will find all links. Everything that Chris talked about here today on pencilversuspixel.com/Chris Coyier. Coyier or Coyier, it doesn't matter. Both are right. Yep. Thanks everyone for being here. We'll see you next week. Bye.